ladies and gentlemen, members of the audience, my fellow friends and colleagues, welcome to PETRONAS Future Talks 2021, panel session number 3, focusing on the topic of research and development to unlock new opportunities for sustainability and accelerating energy transition. I'm Shahrizal Dahlan, Head of Planning and Corporate Services, Project Delivery and Technology in PETRONAS. I will be your moderator for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, the impact of climate change is becoming more and more real and more significant by the day. Greenhouse gases from emissions resulting from human activities, especially various industrial activities, and energy provisions have contributed significantly to the historic rise in the global atmospheric GHG concentration, which in many ways, drive the climate change, and the impact of which is nothing short of catastrophic if you don't do anything. And the impact can be felt to the environment, to human life, as well as to human livelihood. So in today's session, we are very fortunate to have a star-studded lineup of panelists. So let me begin to introduce our panel members, maybe beginning with our very own Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Nasir Rahman. Dr. Nasir Rahman, or you can call him Professor Dr. Nasir Rahman, is currently the Chief Technology Officer for PETRONAS. He's also the SPE Asia Pacific Regional Director, and he's also the SPE Board of Director, members of the SPE Board. And he also holds, first is from the Institute of Petroleum Engineering, Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, the UK. And the second one is from the University Technology of PETRONAS. So welcome to the session, Dr. Nasir. Next, allow me to introduce one of the luminaries in motorsports, especially in Formula One. I would like to introduce to everyone Mr. James Allison. Besides being the current technical director for PETRONAS AMG, if you look at the history of Mr. James, it's very illustrious. He has been in various successful Formula One teams, starting from Benetton all the way to Scuderia Ferrari. And Mr. James Allison had his aerospace engineering degree from the University of Cambridge in the UK. So welcome to the session, Mr. James Allison. Next, we have Mr. Shaiful de Grey, the current CEO of Aker Solutions ASA. And Mr. Shaiful was the CEO of Eco BP before, and then previously he was the Senior BP of Operations and Asset Development for Aker BP. And he had 25 years of working experience in Equinor, where he has held several positions in project execution and field development, with roles including Senior Vice President and Project Director for the Johan Sverdrup project. Did I say that right? I hope I said that right. So, and he had a Master of Science and with distinction in Subsea and Petroleum Engineering from the Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh. So welcome to the session, Mr. Shaiful de Grey. And last but not least, we have Mr. Thomas Nauclear. Mr. Thomas is a senior partner in the McKinsey Stockholm office and joined the firm in 1992. Mr. Thomas founded the McKinsey Sustainability Practice in 2005 based on the first global carbon abatement cost curve. Now leading the scale-up in Europe and also global knowledge leader, he served advanced industrial companies on R&D and technology-driven sustainability opportunities. So again, welcome to the session, Mr. Thomas. So without further ado, let us begin with the first round of our discussion to hear directly from our outstanding leaders on the perspective of the sustainability and energy transition. So then allow me to start with our own Dr. Nasir Rahman. So Dr. Nasir, PETRONAS is guided by the 4 sustainability lenses, one of which is to collaboratively reduce environmental impact, transitioning to lower carbon energy solutions, and to deploy innovative technologies and solutions towards our net zero carbon aspiration. So in 5 to 10 years' time, how do you see the industry-wide collaboration can become the main catalyst for this transition? If you may, Doc.
All right. Thank you, Shah. Thank you, moderator, for the excellent questions. I try to simplify my answer by giving you collaboration is a must in this energy transitions toward low carbon environment. So we like it or we don't like it, we must collaborate and we must embrace the changes together among us. One thing that I would like to highlight is that what I see, two types of collaboration. One is inter-company or inter-industry. One is intra-industry. What we used to do is that some of the oil companies basically collaborate to solve our own common problems in that situation. But in this situation, in these environments where we are moving towards something new, where we are moving towards something that we are not familiar, I think collaborations inter-industry is also a must. It's also compulsory for us to make it happen. Yeah, for example, oil and gas need to team up with mobility, for example, with healthcare, with IT, all of that. Yeah, I can see hydrogen, for example. If we look at hydrogen, one of the components of potential future energy source, we can see oil and gas player inside that games. We also can see some of the CVC type of player is going to that directions, and also some energy companies that moving to that directions. So the line splitting the industry is becoming blur and blur every day. So instead of competing, which I do not believe in that ideas, I think it's a lot making sense to me if we complement each other, we collaborate so that we can minimize the risk, we can optimize our benefit moving forwards, and share the risk and reward together moving forward. If you ask the candle industry to change or to disrupt themselves, I believe they can do that by incremental improvement. But who changed the whole candle industry is a guy named Thomas Edison, right? He's invented the bulb. So somebody outside can have fresh eye view to the issues and come up with a better solutions. So talking about collaborations, I strongly believe taking that Thomas Edison example, for example, is that for us to collaborate inter-industry, whoever we are, so that we can achieve a common goals towards a greener earth.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doc. Thank you. I think from what I'm hearing, right, because when it comes to pushing for sustainability, it's a completely different game altogether. We need paradigm shift. So to collaborate inter-industry and intra-industry, I think is the key things that we need to push forward now. So that being said, I would like to ask the next question to Mr. Shaiful Bin Khalid, right? So Mr. Shaiful, Eco Solutions, is committed to collaborate with the oil and gas industry in creating cleaner, safer, and more sustainable future through improved solutions. So if I may, what solutions can these energy transitional efforts provide for the current oil and gas businesses in overcoming the dependency on hydrocarbon? If I may, Mr. Digre.
Yeah, thank you. And as Dr. Nasir, I want to compliment you for good questions, and also tie my answer back to what Dr. Nasir said. The starting point should be that we are not in denial, but we are sort of openly curious to what's actually happening when we are now looking at this huge challenge and transforming societies and industries towards a cleaner future. I think that's a huge undertaking, but it needs to be met by an open mind. I also really like the emphasis on collaboration, and perhaps that could be my starting point, because I think that Aker Solutions as a company has this excellent starting point, both having the quite sort of an open collaborative approach to how we are dealing with customers and partners within oil and gas. Could be that that's a slightly Norwegian way of operating, but I think it's a good one, particularly when we want to transform. And the other part that means that we have a good starting point is that oil and gas over decades have solved so many complex industrial tasks. So the way that we have built a cluster of companies with experts all over, we've built a core of technologies that actually meets these challenges. And then we are used to working across complex projects, complex operational settings. So there's a starting point here that I really think is valuable. And then for us, to mean something for our customers and the society at large, we started off by setting clear direction and goals. We had to frame this, and what we said is that we are going to cut our own emissions in half by 2030 and be net zero at 2050. That's down to how we operate. And then secondly, we framed our direction and strategy by saying that in 2025, 1/3 of our income should come from renewables and what we call low carbon oil and gas initiatives, and that will increase to 2/3 in 2030. The reason why I say that is really because that shapes our thinking and strategies and the way that we are linking up with customers. And then to the customer side, how do we really help? Again, we have technologies and can help customers to lower the carbon footprint within classical oil and gas. Just a few examples. We are then taking power from shore rather than having these offshore gas turbines. It looks like you're just moving the problem, but you can have so much higher energy efficiency when you have the power production onshore, and you can also have carbon capture solutions. Second example is the way that we are working is sort of the late life settings with the subsea sort of world record gas compression technologies, first in Norway at Oscar, and then also now in Australia with Chevron. So that's really taking the gas play of oil and gas to a better and higher utilization, which is a lot cleaner. But then if you then look at how we can bring all of that technology and help clients to really get into the renewables verticals, we are having initiatives around floating wind, producing power for actual ongoing production of oil and gas. We do that in Norway. And then if we move all the way out, we're obviously then also working with all the major oil and gas players, but also renewable players on the complete sort of renewable space, offshore wind farms. And that's where we are really getting challenged. How do we make the oil and gas version of ourselves relevant for these new areas?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Dikle. That being said, I would like to move my next question to Mr. Thomas now here. So, Mr. Thomas, McKinsey Sustainability outlines 5 focus areas, namely sustainability and portfolio optimization, green business building, decarbonization transformation, net zero financial institution, and sustainable investing. So, being a consulting entity, what are the approach that McKinsey normally use to enable all of these focus areas? So what are the traits of human capital that McKinsey has that others can emulate in pushing for this research and development in this new space? Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, first of all, we are taking the starting point, and we just released a report that said if we're going to get to net zero, 7.5% of global GDP needs to be invested in green capex, 7.5% globally. It's a big number. And so McKinsey has said we need to make this our next strategic platform for client service. And as part of that, we also said, and we in the report, we say 15 technology areas are representing 60 to 70% of global decarbonization. 15 technology areas. So what we've said is we need to mobilize around each of those and help create the facts for the world. So we did it first with the Hydrogen Council, which is basically trying to lay out how fast can hydrogen come down in cost if everybody collaborates on getting scale and technologies to ramp. And so what we're trying to do is now to do the same for the next 9 technology areas. CCS and direct air capture, long duration storage, etc. And we think our contribution can be to mobilize people around creating the facts to make these themes investable, because that's the trick now. We need to have all players across the value chain contributing to start doing the first pilot, scale them up, and learn and rapidly come down the learning curve. And I'll steal a phrase from one of our newly recruited engineers. He comes from Tesla, and he calls the cost ramp down that companies and technologies need to go down, the curve of insanity. It needs to come down insanely fast in order for us as a world to really get the technology in place at a cost-effective level and thereby drive sustainability towards net zero. So that's how we think about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. So now let's move to motorsport. Right? I would like to listen to our motorsport legend, Mr. James Allison. So Formula One has a bold ambition to become net zero carbon by 2030, right? Covering all aspects of its operations. But do you think motorsport can ever be truly sustainable? On the same front, Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team has set some impressive sustainability goals. And with that, how does the team balance the push for sustainability with its ambition to win? Mr. James.
Thank you. Well, as to your first question, can it be truly sustainable? I don't see why not. Motorsport is just a human activity like any other. It's part of the entertainment industry. And while that industry has challenges to do with sustainability, it's not that different to other industries, other activities. And if we focus on each aspect of our activity and figure out how we can shift it from reliance on a fossil fuel to a sustainable path forward, then there's no reason why our industry cannot be sustainable in the same way as every other. And as to the second question, how do we balance the need for competitiveness with the imperative to be sustainable? These two things are simply not in conflict. As a competitive Formula One car can be a completely sustainable Formula One car. I'll give you one example, but I could give you many more. We move a lot of stuff around the world as part of our sport, and although we have a budget to try and make a fast racing car, that budget is not unlimited. And moving things around the world are just a necessary part of our sport. So if we can move things around the world more cheaply, more effectively, more efficiently, then it means we have more money left over for research into how to make the car go faster. And the freight that we take around the world now is something approaching 30% less than it was at its peak in 2018. The sport has grown and grown, and with it we've taken more freight around the world, but we've been feeling the pinch of how much it costs to move that stuff around the world. And internal initiatives have driven down the cost of that freight because we have found out ways to make us able to operate at the circuits around the world with less equipment, moving stuff less around the world. And as a consequence, we've greatly reduced the tonnage of freight that we move, the cost of moving that freight around the world, and the emissions that are created in the process. These things are not in conflict with one another. But it's not just that is not in conflict with the competitiveness of the car. So much else. If we want to go into the marketplace and get good people to join us, people who are going to be able to beat our competitors, we have to be able to show them that we are not a polluting company, that we are not a company that is unsustainable and has no future. And only by doing that sort of thing will we get good talent into our company. Only by having good talent will we have a fast racing car. So that the whole area of sustainability is just another area where we can compete, and it's not in any way in conflict with having a quick car.
Thank you, Mr. James. So with that, I think that sums up the first round of our discussion. For the second round of the discussion, we're going to gain some insights, your insights on the government policies that would push our R&D in the right direction. So maybe perhaps I would like to start with Mr. Shaiful Bin Khalid, right? Mr. Shaiful, the Norwegian government policies have been a great enabler for Norway to mature technologies. So one of the success stories that you have related is actually the subsea compression in Asgard that achieved lower carbon footprint. So would you mind sharing the key success factor or the recipe within Aker Solution itself? How does your R&D team behave? And is it driven by the company's incentive or the right talents, the right mindset, the right skill that drive the technology? So perhaps a word or two from you on this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is a huge and great topic, and I'll try to sort of describe it at a high enough level. I think obviously I hope it starts with a clear company strategy and a direction we want to take from where we are on the technology portfolio we have, and then where we want to be going forward. Just now, that is a lot more to do with transformation than we've seen before, but still, as I said earlier on, it's a great starting point. The second thing I would like to highlight is that a company like ours, we have the experts in fields that are really globally relevant, and the way that a huge organization like ours are linking up and networking based on their areas of expertise across the globe, really industry agnostic, company agnostic, and open to collaboration, I think is number one, and we should nurture that culture around it. Second big topic, I think, is the way that customers involve the right competence and companies when they are entering into new problems to solve, new projects to deliver. If you do that early, the sheets are blank, and you can really sort of join in and think about what could be the right solution here on the concept type of side, but also using existing technology, or even identifying gaps and lift new technology together. But then we need to get involved early. And if you take that to Norway, I think you see that we've been really made accountable to actually develop technology and the industry together as part of the formalized processes within the oil and gas business, dictated, orchestrated from the government side. And so they have requirements for developing local industries, developing technologies as part of the big applications you file before you execute projects. And in those projects, we have this tendency, which I like, to actually partner up and create alliances. We did that on the Oscar Subsea Compression with MAN to deliver that, and we do it again on Jans. We have that going now on what we call the DIP with Fast Subsea to develop a multi-phase pump together with PETRONAS, which is an excellent initiative. And then just lastly, perhaps just mention where we are just now, because last year, COVID-19, sort of an endless drop in everything in our business. In Norway then, we had this temporary tax incentive mechanism for oil and gas industry from the government side. That came with then re-entry of oil and gas activity, but with a clear expectation that the whole industry should transform along the next sort of 6 to 7 years when this oil and gas activity has been secured through that incentive package. We are obliged to actually develop new technologies, new competence areas, new companies in the direction of renewables and digital, for instance. So that is a typical example where the Norwegian government is really taking sort of an orchestrating role, and we meet them with openness and enthusiasm. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Grey. So next, I would like to go to Dr. Nasir. Doc, going towards cleaner energy will definitely disrupt the current operational of our oil and gas business. Which segment do you feel R&D should focus on to minimize the impact of this transition on business interests? For example, if you look at our industry, right, you can go from exploration all the way to retail.
Yeah, short answer, Shah, all of the above. Every single segment need to be improvised, need to be changed and disrupt moving forward. Yeah, Petronas has a philosophy that it's better for us to disrupt ourselves rather than somebody else disrupt us unplanned. So technology is one of the ways for us to disrupt ourselves. We also believe about energy mix. Yeah, I don't think that a single source of energy can basically meet all the demand of the world moving forward. In 2050, for example, we still believe oil and gas still have some role to play. In addition to that, we also have renewable hydrogen and others, biomass, for example, to play roles. So the energy mix will comprise of multiple sources of energy to meet the world hunger for energy. So in this aspect, what I see is that Petronas need to have a two-pronged strategy moving forward. The first one is that we need to make oil and gas cleaner compared to yesterday, right? This is an effort for us to basically putting up our efficiency in the usage of our oil and gas. We also put up big programs under CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage, sequestration. So we put up a lot of programs so that whatever we produce, we basically try to inject and store it back 3 kilometers, 2 kilometers underneath the Earth's surface. The second part of the two-pronged strategy is that we also have to think beyond oil and gas. This is what I said about we are basically thinking of having a big agenda on hydrogens. We also quickly established a new business unit focusing on new energy that basically come from sun through solar and also wind to harvest the energy. We also big in bio, so we are trying to develop a new source energy from bio which we can plan the energy from rather than try to go and explore for naturally occurring energy. So all of that, you know, the short term and the long term need to be taught simultaneously so that we have a very comprehensive, well-rounded, all-rounded solutions for the industry and also for the world.
Thank you very much for the very comprehensive answer, Doc. Maybe next, I would like to ask a question to Mr. Thomas Nauclear. So, Mr. Thomas, McKinsey sustainability unicorns emphasize on building businesses from idea to launch and scaling up programs such as zero carbon steel player, hydrogen electrolyzer, and so on. This is from what I read from the website, right? So could you share the aspiration? So how do you see possibility to accelerate to achieve this in a very short time scale?
First of all, what we are saying is that the world will see a number of new markets being created, and there will be new winners in those markets. And so our overall message to our clients is, you need to think about the energy transition as a situation where you need to play offense. And you really need to play to create value. And I'm building on the previous presenter's perspective that how can I make my carbon molecules, the zero carbon molecule, or making it zero carbon to take it to the market, that we clearly say is the future. Because customers will look at those, even though they need to buy them, and say which ones are most sustainable. It's a great opportunity to differentiate. And we actually think it's the fastest way for the world to decarbonize in the next few years for the oil industry to embark on that journey. So that's number one. But then back to unicorns. We think and we see that there will be these new markets, the new winners. And the good example from Europe is that 18 months ago, somebody came up with a slightly crazy idea of building a zero carbon steel plant. They are now raising 3 billion euros, going to market, and all steel players in Europe all of a sudden is trying to catch up to make zero carbon. And the car companies in Europe are trying to source zero carbon steel because they realize there will be shortage. And I think this is an important thing for these unicorns, that the energy transition will drive shortage of many things. And so in that context, we're advising our large clients like yourself to say, why shouldn't we create those unicorns? Why should an independent Tesla do it? Why shouldn't, because we have many times, we actually have the demand that can make the de-risk the establishment of those unicorns. So why not go and build 1, 2, or 3 with an ambition of creating a couple of billion, 5, 10, 15, 50 billion market cap. And an analogy in Europe is we have 2 companies that have succeeded in the last 5, 10 years to become real big unicorns. Neste, which used to be I should say, a shitty, poor performing refiner in Finland. They are now the global leader on biofuels for biodiesel and biofuels based on oils. Their market cap is larger than British Petroleum today. Think about it, because they were early on taking one of these markets, taking a position and becoming the best at it. And they are coming down the cost curve faster than others, and they have the technologies. Another example is Ørsted, the offshore wind player. They also used to be a very small utility with a lot of oil and gas. They ended up on a journey to become the leader on offshore wind. They are much better at building, lower cost, and in getting the right projects. And their market cap is equal to BP's now. They used to be a tenth of that a long time ago, or 5-10 years ago. So our message to you and to every player in this market is there's a lot of new markets being created. There will be new winners. Why not be one of those winners who really shape an industry, drive down the cost, and basically become the Tesla of your industry? And if you're an incumbent like you are, why don't you create 2 or 3 of them? You have the opportunity to do it. You have the capital demand. You have the relationships. You are better suited than many others. So that's how we talk about it. And what we love about it is that those players, they are the ones who drive the technology agenda forward and who really makes the energy transition accelerate. So that's how we think about it.
Yeah, excellent.
Excellent answer, Mr. Thomas. Next, I would like to pose a question to James. Yeah, James. So now, can you share with us how important is R&D in helping Formula One teams and the sport to strive for greater sustainability, and how will the 2025 regulation change help the sport to reach its sustainability targets?
As a result of trying to make a fast car, focusing completely and utterly on performance, we sort of accidentally are good at doing things that that other people find useful. We care a lot about efficiency because if nothing else, a Formula One car is a sort of embodiment of engineering efficiency. You have a rule book which tells you what you must follow, and then the person who follows that rule book in the most efficient way will come out at the end of it with a car that is the fastest. And in order to be able to follow that rule book in an efficient way, you have to plow an awfully large percentage of what you do into R&D. So most of our company is an R&D company. We are trying to investigate how we can do better next year, what we did pretty well the year before, but what won't be good enough for next year's championship. So we're putting all of our, or very large part of our effort into R&D to try and make our car go faster. Along the way, we produce something that is pretty efficient. And happily efficient in ways that are generally helpful in other industries. We're very good at taking mass out of stuff. We're rather good at energy management. We're pretty good at drag reduction. These are all things that are right at the heart of the challenges that the automotive industry faces in giving itself a more sustainable future. Now, we're not doing that directly to help the automotive industry have a better, a more sustainable future. We're doing it to make a faster racing car. But happily, the byproduct is useful. And we do have, for what is just a sort of small branch of the entertainment industry, we do have quite a global reach, and we do have a very visible presence. And so that sort of advance that we're able to make in those areas is helpful. Now, it's particularly helpful when it isn't accidental, when it isn't just a sort of serendipitous byproduct of wanting to win a race. And when it works at its best is when the sport is taking a regulatory direction, when it's making that rule book that I mentioned earlier on, when it's making that rule book give us incentive to develop technologies that are directly useful. So for 2026, there is a new regulation coming in to the sport, which is going to change the power unit, the engine. It's going to change it to a more a more sustainable version of the engine we're running at the moment. And crucially, the fuel for that engine will need to be 100% sustainable fuel. And that is an area where PETRONAS, as our fuel partner, are playing a great role in helping us prepare for that, so that we can have completely competitive fuel that will help us win races, but as a result of the direction that the sport has taken from a regulatory point of view, will push the R&D and the development of that fuel forwards. And as a result, will indirectly benefit something which has much broader impact than the small amount of fuel that the cars themselves use as they go around the tracks entertaining audiences.
Yeah, perhaps James. I have just a small follow-up question to that. Right, you mentioned about all the good things that been developed in Formula One to improve efficiency, to improve your performance, etc. Can you give one or two examples of the technologies that have made its way to other industries that help humanity at large? For example, some technologies in Formula One that has helped healthcare industry, or maybe perhaps agriculture.
I can give you a small example in the healthcare industry from the period of the pandemic. There was, as COVID swept across the world, it was clear that until vaccines were developed, until alternative therapies were developed, it was clear that that there were going to be a large number of patients who needed help supporting their respiratory system as their body fought off the infection of COVID. And we had some helpful conversations with some doctors down in London who suggested to us that although ventilators were going to be important, a technology slightly simpler technology called CPAP, which is a sort of oxygen supplementary positive pressure breathing system, would be really helpful because it was much smaller, could be done in much greater numbers, and could be rolled out more quickly. And they said that there is going to be a need for these CPAP devices. And so part of our company took on that challenge. We were not allowed to go racing because the industry stopped down while the first wave of COVID hit us. And a small part of our organization focused on how to make a more efficient CPAP device to get ventilators out to get these breathing assistant systems out to hospitals. And within an incredibly short space of time, we had managed to reverse engineer, improve, and then manufacture 10,000 of these units, and also make available to others the ability to do the same. And that, although it has nothing to do with racing cars, it did have a lot to do with the fact that we're good at doing stuff fast. Because one of the ways in which you make a quick car is by being able to iterate the design really quickly. Concept, design, manufacture, test, and then deploy, and go around that loop as fast as you can. And we were able to do that whole thing within a period of days, not weeks or months, but days, for these CPAP medical devices. So that's an example in a completely unrelated industry, but there are many more.
Excellent, James. I think that's a testament on how the drive for efficiency and push for technological advancement have actually helped the humanities at large. I mean, people may have not realized it, but the pandemic made us realize that how important is technological advancement, even in the non-related technologies that as human beings we need to keep on pursuing. So I think that sums up the second round of our discussion. Let's move on to the next segment of the discussion, where we're going to get more insights from the leaders here on and the views on the accelerated energy transitions. Let's start the discussion with a question to Mr. Thomas Nauthier. Right, Mr. Thomas? So on energy transition, is there a target that we would want to achieve as populations and infrastructure continue to grow year by year?
As I mentioned before, if we want to get to net zero, it's an awful lot of money that need to be deployed into new infrastructure. And I mentioned the figure 7.5% of global GDP. that is in itself a massive mobilization of capital. What we're seeing right now is perhaps that part of closing the equation is not the most challenging. We're actually seeing quite a lot of capital looking for a home to be deployed. But there are many other aspects of this transition that are quite challenging and where we all need to contribute. One is, how do we get the capex and the equipment and all the things produced fast enough, in the ground fast enough to have the learning curve? How do we get all the engineering capacity? This is also something, if you're an oil and gas company, which is interesting. Engineering capacity to make this happen. If you think about energy, if you think about cars, if you think about hydrogen, if you think about heat pumps, what it may be, will be a challenge. So if you think about the targets we need to set, we need to start shifting the discussion and what we do as corporations into what are the shortages and how can we help accelerate those shortages on engineering capacity, on getting capex in the ground, in driving down the cost fast enough. And here we are just now as society starting to figure out those aspects of scaling up and acceleration. And it's early days, I would actually say. Until now, most of the companies in the world have been setting targets, more and more aggressive targets. Now we're moving into the phase of how to do it step by step. And there we say, you as a corporation or you as a sector, you need to start thinking, what can we do in the next 2-3 years, next 5 years and 10 years? Not only what can we do in 2050. It's very easy to talk about 2030 as well, but where can we be in 2 or 3 years and 5 and 10? And that's what we probably think that the winners and the ones who can make most money out of this and who drives the acceleration the fastest, they will be the best in doing a little bit what James talked about, doing this in faster loops with more ambition, with more aggressiveness, and also using the whole company to move on it, not only a silo and talking about it on the side, but actually embedding it into how you do things. So if you take car companies, if we stay there, James, we think that the leading players in car companies, they've already announced that they're going to have cars out with 0 embedded carbon in 2030. 0. Nothing from a mine, nothing from anything in the steel or in the battery. The trick for them will, of course, be, how can I now start sourcing 0 carbon steel? Who do I partner up with back in the value chain to get it? Or on the batteries, which battery player will find a mine on nickel that can do it 0 carbon? And this is now what we're seeing in Europe especially, but more globally. This is now what's happening value chain after value chain, and which provides opportunities for players like yourself to contribute in a very meaningful way. So the race is now going to shift from setting targets to how do I get this to happen step by step?
Because basically now, yes, we can set the right target, very ambitious target. And I think for majority of especially oil and gas company, they may have the financial resources to start exploring the adjacent space as well as the white space. But perhaps the greater challenge that I think all of us have to crack and have to solve is how do we retool our human capital to ensure that this lofty target can be achieved?
Yes, so basically where we are going now is that you can imagine that we do different client projects over 2-3 years on how can you improve your cost competitiveness or how can you grow. We are shifting towards doing cost competitiveness on dual objectives. So we do projects that are, how can I help a client get the cost down and reduce carbon by 30% in 2.5 years? And link also our professional arrangements to that, because we think that is the future. And that's the only way to embed this into the capabilities of the core of the company. I think that can work when it comes to product development, like James talked about. It works on sourcing. It works also on sales and marketing, because you can embed it in your brand positioning and really get it there. On the new business building, where you need to build new businesses, there's going to be a race for capabilities. And you will need to recruit and build the capabilities. Europe especially will have a shortage like no tomorrow for engineering capabilities to build things fast. So what does McKinsey do? We go and recruit Tesla engineers, and we recruit the likes. I think US companies probably need to recruit Formula One engineers who can make things happen fast. you can actually make this happen much more rapidly. Otherwise, this is going to be too slow, too unambitious, and not as aggressive enough. So that is, I think, a little bit of inspiration what we're seeing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas, for the excellent answer. Maybe perhaps my next question is to James, right? Just now you mentioned about the push for using sustainable fuel in Formula One cars moving forward. So apart from that, can you share what are the other key areas that can be improved when it comes to pushing for sustainability from your team's perspective?
From our point of view, we've already managed to get our CO2 production down by about 50% since its 2018 peak. We have been carbon neutral on our site since 2019, but our activities overall are not carbon neutral, and we have a long way to go there. We think that the clear biggest area where we are not sustainable at the moment is in our air transport. It's not only is it not sustainable, it's also very visibly not sustainable. And we believe quite strongly that the privilege of being allowed to pursue the sport that we do across the world, moving all these people and stuff around the world, that privilege is a privilege we should do in a responsible manner. And so we are currently looking at how we can, not in 2030, but in the next year and the years beyond, how we can switch from our current way of doing that to using an approach that will make it neutral by going for the sustainable aviation fuels. And where companies, as Thomas was saying, who have invested into that are starting to produce product that we can buy and yes, pay a premium for, but that's actually the true cost. That's the true cost of the activity that we're privileged enough to do. And we believe that by paying for that product, that sustainable product, we will be contributing in our own small way to the further investment in those industries, making it more available in the future to a more mass market. And in the meantime, not waiting for other industries to do this, but taking leadership ourselves to make sure that our activities are being done in a sustainable way and more close to home. And so we're wishing to invest ourselves. We will be erecting in the near future a solar array close to home at our factory, which will allow us to create the majority of our energy needs right here on site and or very near to our factory. Will allow us to know that we have actually increased the amount of green energy that's in circulation in the country. And initiative by initiative, step by step, we will make sure that we will get to our target of net zero, not by 2030, but substantially before, so that we can hopefully go about our business in a way that is competitive and sustainable and a bit better protected than it might be from people who see Formula One as something of a problem child for sustainability. And we'll be able to show that it isn't that way, and that actually this is an industry with a good story, and our company doing good things to try and make this problem, make our contribution to this problem going away.
Thank you very much, James, for the very clear answer. My next question is to Mr. Shaiful de Grey. So now let's talk about digital, right? So with digital transformation as the forefront of energy transition, how does this create more impact towards sustainable energy production and a zero emissions future? Essentially, the question revolves around the role of digital in accelerating energy transition.
Yeah, and I think it's key. Just to start with some of the things you are alluding to, both Thomas and Shaiful, you know, the way of turning targets to actions, because I think all of us have been in this, you know, PowerPoint mode for some years, and actually turning all the digital opportunities into something real, I think, is the threshold that we are at. And I guess there's somewhat a paradox that you know, we're embracing it all the time in our private lives, but And there we are just jumping into a digital version of ourselves, but in our professional lives, things tends to go a bit slower. And if our starting point is oil and gas, and as you say, Sharizal, we have a lot of the right opportunities and the resources to actually be forward-leaning on developing new technologies and taking them into use. But it goes a bit slow. And I think, it's perhaps back to how we have been, setting up our own sort of competition in the sort of the industry environment, how we have created silos and sort of vertical lock-ins when it comes to digital solutions. So that's something to break down. And I think one of the things that we are doing now, which then talks to the energy transition part of it, is actually to set targets for our own carbon footprint, because and we made that a target for the whole organization. We do it to create awareness and consciousness, but also to increase the competence level. And we invite the whole organization to actually contribute with solutions. And so many of those solutions are based on digital technology. So I think that's the first comment for me, that we need to create this cultural program, which is sort of self-propelled in its nature, so that the whole big organization and the industries across companies are actually doing it from the inside and not being sort of suppressed digital program. And then the next two things from my side is that we are running digital programs to change the way that we are operating, fabricating, and executing projects. So that is all about how we collaborate in this huge mass of vendors that we tie together in a big puzzle. So and we've had a lot of learnings throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, obviously, as the rest of the world. We are running programs which then dictates how we are constructing things on our yards, the way that we do that with digital methodology. And then one example also is, the way that we are using the classical sort of digital twin technology to create shared virtual realities throughout the whole project life. And in such a project, we normally spend millions of man hours in engineering, and just now we see that we are cutting those by roughly 20% the next couple of years. So those are the things happening in our own business, and then we are designing industry solutions for digital operation and production. That's sensors and robotics, and the way that we are designing for unmanned operation, where, for instance, energy optimization, production optimization is leading to a smaller carbon footprint because vessels and logistics are optimized. The power consumption is optimized, and the availability of data and the use of data are getting even more advanced, so that we are really taking out the potential in the limitation of the whole sort of process facility. For instance, normally you build up the safety level in a complex facility by looking at all sort of individual thresholds, and then the operation just becomes a huge compromise. But if you're really advanced and connected with all your data, you can actually take out the maximum limits on all the different contributors, and by that really use the system at full. But I think back to the fact that this is a huge sort of mindset and cultural shift that we really need to embrace, all of us. And a company like ourselves, we are really there where we try to create that pull from everyone in the whole organization.
Thank you, Mr. Shaiful. Yeah, as they say that data is the new oil, and hence I think the transition from oil is actually to go to data. But the thing is, then data can help us to unlock new value from new data and new value from old data. But unfortunately for the majority of the oil and gas industries, right, our facilities are located in the middle of nowhere. So when it was built, the network infrastructure was nothing less than optimum. So now I think the biggest challenge faced by a lot of the oil and gas players is how do we build the right and the most cost-effective data infrastructure to truly enable us to go to digital. Right? Otherwise, at the end of the day, economics would dictate, right? So what's your suggestion to this?
Well, I think it starts by perhaps the software, but collaboration, because what you see is that there's so advanced systems that we are building, and you have a lot of data being actually captured through our systems. But then you take it to the next level, and there you see no sort of collaboration. We lack the availability of that data, and we are not sort of putting it into one totality, which makes it so it makes sense together. We don't contextualize it in the proper way. I think the initiatives going now, where equipment suppliers like MAN, they come with their highly advanced compressors, for instance, with a lot of data interpretation need and actions taken on top of that. And then they get availability throughout the operational phase. And that data then is part of one big sort of contextualized layer of data for the whole offshore oil and gas production facility. And then companies with this sort of horizontal data availability, they can tap into the top of that again with different applications which serves different purposes. For instance, energy optimization across many equipment suppliers' products. And that kind of sort of horizontal neutrality in the data space is something that we need to seek more of, because there's so many systems that are locked into their own silos and not available for optimization. And then obviously I think things will go in unmanned direction. Something a bit scary happens when you take the man out of the equation, because you need sort of the contact with the setup to make sure that you interpret the settings the right way and are close to the facility to take action. But at the same time, that increases obviously the consequence if something goes wrong, and it perhaps doesn't force ourselves to think differently. So creating something that is unmanned, creating something that is subsea, triggers solutions that I think is really powerful and viable for the future. And then I think the whole space of renewables have a completely different need for safety in solutions, because you don't have hundreds of bars of oil and gas being trapped. You have a solar farm or a windmill, which is a different safety issue by itself, and there you can actually see different levels of both quality and complexity, and there you can have digital replacing a lot of human factors, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Digre, for the excellent insights. Next, I would like to move to our Dr. Nasir. Doc, hydrogen and CCUS seems to be the talk of the town, right? So what role could hydrogen and CCS technologies play in the future of energy, if you may, Doc?
Hydrogen and CCUS is basically talk of the day. Everybody is talking about hydrogen. Everybody is talking about CCUS. So from my point of view, these two subjects will be one of the key areas for the oil and gas industry, at least, on how are we going to move into energy transition to a low carbon industry. Yeah. So no doubt that CCUS and hydrogen will play a very significant role. Yeah. But if you ask me, in the next 5 to 10 years, hydrogen and CCUS will be business as usual. Yeah, everybody is talking about it. Everybody is doing about it, and hopefully we achieve something to make sure that our industry become cleaner and cleaner. So as a CTO of PETRONAS, I have to think beyond that. Yeah, this is where we are basically thinking, for example, on how one of the ways that can we grow the oil. We are basically thinking renewable oil. Can we grow the oils on the farm, for example, and then we harvest the oil as and when we like it. Yeah. Another one is we are basically putting some investment on artificial sun. It's basically try to create a sun that we all like, that produce energy, but without the radioactive issues. Yeah, we are basically talking about fusion reaction rather than fission reaction. So in that case, my group in research for PETRONAS, we need to think beyond CCUS and hydrogen. I strongly believe CCUS and hydrogen play a major part, but what is more important for the technology group like us is basically think beyond it, and that is what I try to to summarize, Shah.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. I can see from a lot of publications that hydrogen and CCUS do indeed have gained quite a lot of traction on the ground. But I think up to this juncture, right, there's still quite a number of big challenges that needs to be overcome before hydrogen can be the next fuel. So, for example, even though hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, but it is not available in its in the form that we can readily use. And then one of the key challenges that we need to crack is on the hydrogen transport. So from your research angle, Doc, what are the things that are currently being done to ensure that the hydrogen that we produce, right, whether it's blue or blue, gray or green, can be easily transportable, so that we can start to distribute the molecules to the customers?
Yeah, that is a research subject by itself. One of the big component factor for hydrogen to fly by itself in autopilot mode, we need to reduce the cost. Yeah, one of the issues is generation cost. So we need to reduce the cost as much as possible, so that it will create a domino effect for the rest of the world to use hydrogens. Yeah. The second part, just like you said, the transportations. Yeah. Some people believe that transportation is something that we expect to happen, but it will not happen. Why I say that? Because if you look at green hydrogen, for example, we are basically talking about power and water. That's the two components of green hydrogen that is very important to tackle. Yeah, and in that area, playing ground that we are playing is a bit fair all over the world. Yeah, everybody have sun or even wind or even solar power, hydropower, that sort of renewable energy. And we also need water, and everybody basically have water. Yeah. So how are we going to use it? Is that we can think about how to transport hydrogen, but some people basically think is that there will be no transportation cross ocean, cross Atlantic or cross Pacific. The technology will become the currency of that. So if you need hydrogen, you create in situ in your country and have a small transportation to the real customer. The big bulk transportation from one country to other country will become history of oil and gas. That is a mindset of the oil and gas company, that I have oil and you need oil, so I sell the oil to the buyer. But in hydrogen, I don't think that role will be copied for the hydrogen industry. So we need to look a little bit different compared to what we used to have handling the issues. So transportation might be one issue or might not be an issue. Time will tell.
Excellent, Doc. Excellent. Maybe perhaps James, last question for you. Do you foresee that Formula One will be using hydrogen as fuel anytime soon?
Well, they're certainly not going to be using it in the next generation of power unit, which is the 2026 through to 2030 something power unit. But beyond that, possibly. It's a little early to tell exactly what the winner will be in the automotive sort of prime mover category will be. But the next generation of power unit, no, it will be a sustainable hydrocarbon-based fuel.
Thanks, James. That pretty much sums up our third segment, which is the last segment for the day. And I would like to give the opportunities for each of the panelists to give 2 or 3 minutes closing remarks on your thoughts and aspiration related to sustainability, as well as related to the how R&D can push towards creating the green economies. So maybe let's start with Mr. Thomas.
I think the next 5 to 10 years are going to be a major disruption in many industries driven by the energy transition, and technology is going to be at the center of it. So technology innovation will drive the future Teslas of every industry. And I think that's a very exciting opportunity for PETRONAS and for other players to really take the lead and try to create a winning position, create the businesses that actually capitalize on it, and at the same time mobilize the world, because this is a play that you can't do on your own. You need to get the whole value chain with you. So I would say be very ambitious on what you do, but also how you do it and how you capitalize on it. That is my inspiration to all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Next, maybe perhaps a word or two from Mr. Shaiful.
Yeah, I think that was a great starting point. I think I'm sort of in this big engineering construction type of company, and I guess we could be a bit sort of engineers when you think about this. But if I try to zoom out, so many choices I have to make, and the strategy we now are operationalizing is about our surroundings. And I think what's, this transition that we're in is about everything in the whole sort of global setting, and trying to both invite for collaboration so that we take on this big change together. And that's one dimension I'm really focused on. The other one is to understand the consumer changes, the society changes, because things are moving towards shared economies. We have the emerging countries and regions where I personally would really like us to make a difference. Let's solve things in the known areas. The usual suspects do things together to come up with the right technologies, and then they are then exportable to areas which really needs to jump some steps in the way they are emerging. And then I would really love to be part of creating something like that. And also, if we could look at different things with new eyes again, I think moving away from oil and gas, I think we get the obvious issue of fusion and fission and nuclear, and having the technology, the capital to really dig into that and create safe solutions and sustainable solutions also when it comes to waste and the like, I think is something for the future. Perhaps not right away, but in the long run, I think that will be an extremely important area to investigate together.
Thanks, Shaiful. Thanks. Next, perhaps James, your thoughts.
In my own sport, something that we say to each other quite a bit, it's easy to forget, but we say to each other quite a lot, is that most people overestimate what's possible in a year. But strangely, they massively underestimate what's possible in 5 years. And so you can often have someone screaming for a result tomorrow, but actually you could hugely knock them out of the park if you just have a really committed program, thought through carefully, and then delivered over a period of 5 years. And I think that's the sort of approach we're trying to take to this problem, to make sure that our company, over that period of a small number of years, has got a very ambitious program that we intend to make happen. And we're very confident that we'll be able to do that. And I would hope that everyone across the whole of the global economy will be taking a similar view, that this is a big challenge, but it's in no way an impossible one. And that if we have a plan that is committed for a period of sort of 4 or 5 years, then we will make a lot of progress, and then just keep that rolling forwards. So it is daunting, but completely achievable. In my own world, these engineering projects seem small compared to those of Shaiful or Thomas or Dr. Nasir, but that's, I guess, because you tend to only know the industry you're in. But I would imagine that for all of the panelists here, that when they look at the challenges that they face in their own worlds, they too can see the path forward. Doesn't mean it's easy, but they can see the path forward. And just using the engineering skill and the fact that the customer simply will not tolerate us doing anything different should allow it to be solved, and solved, I think, sooner than people will actually have anticipated.
Yeah, thank you, James, for imparting your wisdom. Last but not least, Dr. Nasir, your thoughts, please.
I just want to say one thing, that sustainability and energy transition is real. And PETRONAS never try to deny it. Yeah, so because of that, we even change our mission and vision statement to our statement purpose, to be a progressive energy and solution partners enriching life for sustainable future. So with that statement, vision of statements, we basically try to unite and rally all our staff towards energy transition and also sustainability. And to PETRONAS as a organizations, we see the need for energy transitions and sustainability from customer lenses. We see demand from our customer asking for it. We see demand from host authority asking for it. So we cannot deny it. And we treat these two things as a license to operate. So that is my conclusion remark, that we have to embrace the changes and we need to do it fast and more efficient compared to whatever have bring us from the past to today. We need to think a new way on how to bring us today to the future. Thank you, Shah, with that.
Thank you very much, Doc. Essentially, history has brought us to where we are today,
Yeah.
and innovation will take us to the future and beyond. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, members of the audience, my fellow friends and colleagues. That pretty much sums up our panel 3 discussion for today for our PETRONAS Future Talks 2021. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thanks all of the excellent panelists that we have today for their wisdom, for the insights, and then for setting the right tone for us, for all of us to adopt and adapt moving on in our journey towards pushing for sustainability. Thank you very much, everyone, and back to the organizer.
Thank you, Shah, and thank you, all the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.